The frigid wind swept through the cramped streets of a modest American town, shaking the windows of restaurants and causing the neon signs to flicker as they fought valiantly to cast warmth into the darkness. Beyond one such restaurant, a man remained hunched against a brick wall, his garments shredded, his hair disheveled, his features bearing the marks of struggles invisible to others. His limbs had failed him, confining him to a weathered wheelchair, while his empty gaze revealed a chronicle of endless nights enduring exposure to the elements. He represented the type of individual others would overlook without consideration, someone society had already assessed, categorized, and discarded. However, within that restaurant, someone's compassion was destined to transform his narrative completely. Viewers, if you have faith in generosity, renewed opportunities, and the strength of empathy, please consider liking this video, sharing it with someone who requires inspiration today, and subscribe in Untold Stories 0.4 so additional narratives like this one can reach hearts across the globe. Your engagement sustains these stories. The server, Emily, was well acquainted with struggle herself. At merely 24, existence had provided her with wisdom that exceeded her chronological age. She labored through consecutive shifts, managing trays of hot dishes and coffee mugs with an exhausted smile, while internally fretting over unpaid bills accumulating on her kitchen table and her younger brother's educational expenses that perpetually seemed beyond her grasp. Nevertheless, regardless of her fatigue, Emily possessed an inner resilience, one that looked beyond the grime and desolation of the man outside and recognized something most individuals overlooked: his inherent worth. Each night following her final service to patrons, she would deliver him a warm bowl of broth and a piece of bread. She never inquired about his identity, and he never volunteered it. All she understood was that his gaze, though dimmed by grief, gentled whenever she set nourishment before him. As days transformed into weeks, Emily began detecting the murmurs of fellow customers. Some expressed annoyance at her empathy, grumbling about how assisting vagrants merely promoted idleness. Others displayed their heads in sympathy, believing the man had squandered his existence and bore sole responsibility for his circumstances. Yet Emily refused to allow those opinions to alter her convictions. She recalled evenings when she and her brother had retired to bed famished, awaiting their mother's return from employment, only to discover she had foregone her own sustenance, so they might consume food. Emily understood starvation. She comprehended despair, and she recognized that the most modest gesture could occasionally seem miraculous. The vagrant, though physically weakened, possessed an air of enigma. His wounds suggested untold hardships. His quietness stemmed not from arrogance, but from profound anguish. And although he remained seated silently beside the restaurant window, observing existence pass him by, his presence commanded attention. Gradually, Emily's modest gesture of compassion developed into a connection, neither acknowledged verbally but both treasured. During nights when snow covered the pavement, she secretly provided him with additional dinner rolls wrapped in tissues. When tempests shook the restaurant windows, she filled his broth slightly more generously than customary, pretending to ignore her supervisor's critical expression. Then arrived the evening when everything transformed. The man appeared more fragile than normal, his hands shaking as he attempted to raise a utensil. Emily crouched beside him, stabilizing the bowl, her eyes brimming with worry. For the initial time, he gazed at her, not with the defensiveness of a damaged spirit, but with the burden of someone harboring a secret too overwhelming to endure. His mouth opened, and in a quiet, raspy voice he disclosed words that astonished her. He was not a vagrant. He was not impoverished either. He was actually a billionaire. Initially, Emily believed his consciousness was affected by confusion, yet his stare remained firm, his manner determined. He shared with her details an existence once characterized by soaring glass structures, expensive vehicles, and publication covers that celebrated him as among America's most accomplished business leaders. But while pursuing fortune, he had sacrificed everything: relatives, confidence, and affection. Deceived by his closest associates, devastated by the demands of avarice and determination, he had abandoned everything, selecting obscurity over extravagance. His wounds originated not merely from physical conflicts, but from battles fought in conference rooms and within his own conscience. Emily sat motionless, her pulse racing as she understood the man she had nourished daily from sympathy was someone who had previously possessed more wealth than she could fathom. But what affected her most profoundly was not his riches, nor his downfall. It was his appreciation. He admitted that throughout his years of achievement, surrounded by individuals who professed to value him, he had never experienced authentic generosity the way he did when she positioned a humble bowl of broth before him, expecting nothing in exchange. Following that evening, the account of Emily and the vagrant began circulating beyond the restaurant premises. The man, gradually recovering his vitality and desire to continue living, began frequenting the restaurant not as an anonymous presence outside, but as a customer within, silently witnessing Emily's determination. Unbeknownst to her, he began implementing strategies. Behind the veil of his modesty still existed enormous wealth, and he determined that this young woman, who had perceived him as human, neither as a fallen billionaire nor a vagrant, would be the individual whose circumstances he would transform. Several weeks afterward, Emily discovered an envelope pushed beneath her apartment entrance. Within was not merely correspondence, but paperwork that would modify her life's trajectory permanently. The billionaire had discreetly settled all her obligations, guaranteed her brother's schooling, and even facilitated her ownership of the very restaurant where she had labored relentlessly. She sobbed that evening, not due to money or the sudden relief from her struggles, but because her humble gesture of compassion had revealed a principle she had always maintained internally, that empathy could extend outward in manners one could never anticipate. The man vanished shortly thereafter, leaving no evidence except for the inheritance of his gratitude. But the restaurant he entrusted to Emily's care became a sanctuary for others. She maintained her practice of serving meals to anyone who entered hungry, never refusing those who possessed nothing for payment. And through every gesture of kindness, she sensed the unseen presence of the man who had once been shattered but had reminded her and the community that wealth held no significance if it could not be utilized to mend spirits. If this narrative has moved your heart, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Untold Stories 0.4. These accounts of generosity and second opportunities are intended to cultivate hope, and your support enables them to reach additional people who require them. Before we conclude, I wish to make one particular request. Please leave a comment below and express your thoughts. Would you have demonstrated kindness to the vagrant if you were in Emily's position? Your words might motivate someone else to select compassion today. And thus, the story of a server and a vagrant turned billionaire teaches us all. Occasionally, the most valuable treasures in existence are not discovered in financial institutions or corporations, but in the modest, silent gestures of kindness that unveil the genuine wealth of the human spirit. Existence frequently teaches us that appearances can mislead. The man who appeared damaged and overlooked was actually someone who had witnessed both the greatest peaks of success and the deepest chasms of despair. Yet what proved most significant ultimately was not the wealth he once possessed, but the kindness demonstrated to him when he had nothing. Emily's simple gesture of compassion, a bowl of broth offered without criticism, became the pivotal moment in a story that could have concluded in silence. Instead, it became a heritage of hope, a reminder that love and kindness possess greater strength than money ever will. In a world where countless individuals pass by without observing, where people rush to judge and hesitate to care, stories such as this illuminate what truly defines our humanity. We all bear burdens, we all carry wounds, but we all possess the capacity to alleviate someone else's suffering through a small demonstration of compassion. Sometimes the most extraordinary miracles are concealed within the most ordinary actions. A smile, a meal, a gentle word when someone requires it most. This story transcends the tale of a billionaire masquerading as a vagrant. It concerns how kindness can redefine destinies. Emily provided nourishment, but more significantly, she offered respect. And in response, she learned that one gesture of kindness can create ripples leading to a future more brilliant than she ever envisioned. So, allow this story to serve as a reminder to us all. Never dismiss the influence of kindness. What may seem insignificant to you could represent everything to someone else. Remember this message. And whenever you encounter someone in distress, recall that compassion requires nothing but can transform everything.